In that, I need to share my screen.
Oh yeah, let me do that real quick. You should be able to now.
Great, thanks. And yeah, so for everybody else, I'm the founder of Midpage, and I'm just going to show why and how legal research is changing and some of the cool things that we've added recently. But of course, first I have to change my Zoom permissions. Okay, I have to leave and rejoin to share my screen.
All right.
So Brian, what's your background? Are you a litigator or former litigator?
I actually started in litigation way back, but I've been doing more regulatory and product and commercial work. So
Got it.
I got out of litigation pretty quick.
Yeah, I get it. Maria, what about you?
I'm mostly a generalist, but I do more regulatory work and product work like Brian, but for a health tech company.
Oh, cool.
Mhm.
Okay, so this is Midpage, and again, you can use it to find cases, research across precedents, but also some really interesting ways to then look at those cases, understand them better, and organize your research, and keep track of the hundreds of snippets that you may come across during a project. Yeah, and to start with, there's obviously thousands of cases, whatever I would start searching for here. So we wanted to really show results that are useful to you, and so we can add some background information.
This loss of trust in our institutions, in Kate Middleton's case, and
I think Kimberly needs to. Yeah, thanks. Yeah, so I'm just gonna enter a few facts here. This can be anything. So imagine you're working on a case. Maybe your client gave you an email with a few bullet points, and you can start researching. And you can just copy in some bullet points here, like I'm doing, or maybe upload a complaint PDF. And then Midpage knows something about your case. And then we can start searching like in a normal legal research tool, but it gets much more customized. So I'm just going to search here, maybe filter for New York. And I have a bunch of cases that appear here, just like you used to. And then we built in some tools that you can use to understand these results much better. So first, maybe you want to see just a quick summary of what is that case even about? What sort of procedural standing does it have? And this is helpful. Maybe it tells me that this case doesn't really go the direction I want. Maybe this one here is more interesting. And after you roughly know what a case is about, it would be really interesting to see how this case compares to my case that I'm working on. And so since I added this information here before, I could now say, compare these facts. And what it does, it looks at those facts that I entered and gives me a list of similarities and a list of differences. And this is all based on something like OpenAI's GPT model, where you get these bullet points, and it's like a kind of summary, but focusing on the key facts that are similar and those that are different. And now, as always, this AI is not really a black box in the same way that it used to be the case, because you can always click onto any of the sources that it added here, and then basically just scroll to that section of that document. So it's a really easy way to peek into a document to find out, is this even useful for me or not, before you start scrolling for ages or open 100 tabs without easily having a way to check if it's helpful. And so there's a few other things in here, but maybe I said this case is still actually not what I'm looking for. And I looked at this a bit more closely and decided it's not for me. So I'm just going to hide it, that if it appears again in my search, I remember, yeah, this is the case that I decided wasn't quite right. Now with this next case here, maybe I'm going to jump to that one because that's just a slip opinion. What you see here, it kind of tells me a few other things already about the case. So I can do the outcome thing again. And I can see here this red ring. It kind of tells me this would be unfavorable. And you can always go and check this yourself and verify this. Maybe check this and it is actually unfavorable. But it's really helpful to have some idea of what you're looking at before you get hit with a swirl of text. And that's really what we're about. We're trying to understand what you're trying to look for. And so maybe you start noticing after a while you have the same questions again and again that you want to ask many different cases to. And this is along the same paradigm of just understanding the search results better. Maybe you find that since our issues about this click wrap agreement, where there's sort of a terms and conditions button, and it was a bit too small, so somebody complained about not being able to see it. So you could say, was the button size explicitly mentioned? And this is something that, there might be some questions that are easy to find with keywords, and there's other questions where you need much more nuance, and it's just kind of give you a glimpse into this. And maybe a different question could be, because you can ask several, is what is the relationship between the parties? And then for every case that you click on, you can see the answers to all those questions. Okay, this is of course the demo effect. It did exactly, here it works. Yeah, and so these were a few examples of just how you can understand the search results better. And that's the first stage. There are several stages to working with Midpage. Of course, when you open a case, then we have sort of a different set of tools that sort of changes the experience of reading out. But this was just the search.
Is this
yeah.
what you just went through? Is this kind of like the workflow you would suggest? So first you put in information about your case or your topic, and then you kind of start this broad search, and then kind of go through, okay, what are the questions that I want to ask so that I can start comparing? Well, I guess you can start comparing the cases to your case, and then you start asking additional questions to learn a little bit more as you're reading, because obviously as you're reading these cases, you're going to come up with questions. So is that kind of like the ideal flow that you would think somebody running through their research would follow?
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, often at the beginning, you don't know what are all the important questions that you'll end up answering. And you will find a few cases that explain, that field, that domain of law a bit better to you. And then you can add those questions because now you found something, you want to ask that across all of the results that you see next. And yeah, so it totally makes sense to either just start searching right away or add some information and then start searching. And then when you find more, you can use these tools more and more. And the thing is, when ChatGPT came out, people thought, oh, they can use that to answer their legal questions. But that is a bit of a black box. And what we're doing here is we're giving you lots of tools that you can guide and control. So you can say, these are the issues I'm interested in, and then we'll just start generating that information for you. And with every generation, there's always this source attached to that. And what actually happens is that you still end up opening a lot of cases, but a lot less than you would have otherwise, because you open a lot less cases that aren't even remotely relevant. And when you open them, you know why, you know which section to start with. And that can be, hugely differential in finding the true important hidden cases, not getting distracted by, by all the other ones. Yeah, but now let's. Yeah.
I was just gonna say to double down on that, like when I use Lexis and Westlaw, I think, 10 years ago, it didn't strike me as slow, but now it does. Like when you're clicking through pages and opening up new tabs, new pages, and like even their bookmarking or saving functionality is kind of clunky. So here, it just, like you said, you're able to see a lot more information right here, and kind of before even clicking in, learning a lot about the cases. And then even when you do click in, it's kind of like a quick view. So you're saving like seconds every single click, versus with the other ones, it's like you're opening a new tab and now you get disorganized and each one takes a while to load. And so I feel like this is just a much faster way of doing the same exact research. It's just way more efficient.
Yeah, exactly. For example, this compare facts feature that I mentioned before, where you see the similarities and differences, that's being used, hundreds of times every day. And that's something where people say it does actually solve you several minutes sometimes. And saving time is nice, but it also means you save lots of distraction. Yeah, and so if I want to maybe open up a case now, I'm just going to jump into this. Maybe it says here that there's a key difference. I'm going to pick a different case there. So let's jump into this case here. And you jump into the important section immediately. And now we have this very long case. And of course, what you do is you start taking notes. Right? You start finding some arguments or some facts that you want to keep track of. And in the past, you would have used Word, and you could still do that to copy over snippets that you like. But it becomes very helpful to just keep track of things by highlighting them. When you copy it, it also gets saved here. And there might be several sections that you like. And everything that you save here gets put into your research notebook. That's basically the collection of all your findings. This means that when after a while, when you've done all this research, after looking at several hundreds of cases, maybe, that you have this notebook that is organized by topic. You can use the same tools to sort of now ask questions across all the cases in your notebook, and get reminded of some of the details that you may have forgotten. And you can also attach comments to that and keep track of things as you'd expect. And maybe I added some comments here. Maybe there's a legal citation here that this is an interesting argument they make, so I want to actually peek into what is this case that they're referring to here. Now in the past, I would have just opened a new tab again, making this 1 out of 100, and then in an hour, maybe when I've finished working on this, reading this case, and then I have time to finally visit all the open tabs that I've seen before. And that gets kind of confusing because you keep getting lost and starting new sort of threads of very long documents. So what would be much nicer instead is if you see anything that is interesting to you, first you have a tool to really help explain why this is interesting, not just a link that you can click on. And so here we're giving you the same sort of quick summary of what this case is about, and you can even see an actual excerpt from that case that they're referring to. Even if they didn't mention it as an explicit quote, we kind of use AI to find the terms that they were talking about and just highlight them here. So you have a quick window into that case. And you can also use the same sort of compare facts as before, which makes it really easy, because you can now see this case would actually be very interesting, and so you can add it to your notes. Yeah,
do that with all these cases. So like, why would that one be highlighted versus the other ones, or am I just misreading how the UI works?
You can do that with all the cases. So in fact, I'm on a developer version. Usually this gray part here isn't there. That's a detail, but it does work with all cases. Essentially, I'm wondering if I should open a different case to show this better. What we're doing here with these things is we're also highlighting the key legal standard and just sort of summarizing them on the side here. And that highlighting actually currently just includes a lot of cases, which is why they don't sort of show as being highlighted in gray. But yeah, so after you've added a few cases and you've added a few comments into your notebook, you can sort of just take a look at it by going here, and you see all these cases that I've visited before. This is the one from just now where I added some comments, and you can now just export this to Word, or you can copy that over, maybe to an email or something, and everything is backlinked, so you don't have to worry about the tedious copying of the right kind of citation, and it saves you a lot of time to keep track of everything. Yeah, and that's sort of the whole process of how we turn finding cases into an organized notebook. And we are working on sort of making everything go even further by then having this Word plugin that is going to help you draft using this notebook in the background as a way to really easily pull quotes that you saved. But that's something for the future. So we do have a new way of turning this notebook into something that is going to be really interesting and useful. This grid that I mentioned at the beginning. But yeah, maybe I'm just gonna put a pause here and we'll see if there's more questions.
Yeah. Any questions from the group?
Yeah, I have a question. You mentioned these are for cases. Are you able to pull up advisory opinions? Like, for instance, I work in healthcare, and so a lot of it's not on cases, it's on what the OIG says or what OCR or HIPAA says the law should
Right.
be. Is it solely just for things that go through like, does it pull only through litigation, or can I pull research through advisory opinions too?
Yeah, good question. So right now we are just focusing exclusively on judicial opinions, and not including advisory opinions.
Okay.
But we plan to sort of just throw more and more and more in. I think the next thing we'll do, once we sort of make sure we have every single case in the United States, then we'll sort of add in all of the statutes and state statutes, and then we'll go into more regulatory kind of things. And that's probably going to be in that group.
Got it. Thank you.
But there's no reason, just real quick, I assume, and I'm curious to hear your thoughts about this, if this workflow sort of makes sense to you, and even for advisory opinions. Like if we could just add those in, say tomorrow, would then you still be able to utilize the workflow that Otto's shown here?
Yeah, I mean, that's a good question. I think maybe the workflow is slightly different just in that you're not really comparing facts, right?
Yeah, I'm making a tailored opinion of what my product can and cannot do. Like, a good example of a question I have is like surcharges, 50 state surcharges. You have certain laws, and then you have state laws, and then you have the visas, contract, and then you have the whatever litigation. And that's how I frame it for my
Gotcha.
product flow of answering their questions.
Cool. That's super helpful.
No. Yeah, I mean, one thing that will be more and more normal, so even if we don't have it, others will definitely, other platforms that have that kind of data will probably come up with similar kind of UIs and workflows to deal with this, because if you're dealing with very long documents, it's just very, very helpful to use language models to get a better picture of this. And so maybe one more general way than what I showed just now is and soon you can upload your own documents here, and then that's also a way to work with any kind of documents. But it's become more and more obvious, I think, to us building these things at least, but probably to everybody, that having a interface like ChatGPT isn't quite right, but it is useful to be able to chat with your document. And so either with your notebook or with your document. And so maybe if you have this case open here and you have a few questions, you could, it obviously knows all of my facts from before. And so I can ask a question and will answer by taking everything into account and pointing to a few sections, which is sometimes easier to not miss something than just by scrolling through everything. Yeah, so maybe here, if I want to ask something like, something like this, which is more about the facts of the case, it's just going to help me guide to that correct section. Yeah, so I guess one thing that I would love to know about you two is, have you ever, or maybe, or everybody that is here, have you ever tried some of these AI tools? maybe they were focusing on a different part, or maybe they were doing something very similar. I was curious sort of, because there's many good things out there, and we're thinking that we're building a very new way of interacting with case law now. And yet many people have yet to sort of try out even the first part. But of course, if you're here, you're probably more tech curious than most lawyers.
Yeah, I mean, I can speak for myself. I've at least like played around with a handful of different AI legal tools, and it seems like a lot of them are focused on basically being able to more or less like provide answers to questions. So like being kind of like a superior place to go, like ask a question and get an answer along with sources. And they sort of market themselves as, you know, our model is better than other models, or our, you know, model, like whatever we're building. Like, I know they're not building like entirely new models. They're kind of leveraging the models that are out there with additional guardrails and prompting and stuff like that. But this kind of seems to be a little bit different in that it's saying, here's actually a better workflow that is supplemented by AI to allow you to work faster and more efficiently, leverage the good parts of these models, and then kind of like still basically dictate how the research, or I guess, yeah, I mean, you're not relying on AI for answers, you're relying on AI to supplement and speed up your workflow, which is, I think, is a slightly different proposition here, which I actually like, given the current state of where these models are and their abilities to give really solid answers without, you know, needing additional research.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, that's totally what we're going for. I feel that there are many kinds of guardrails that we are putting in here, but they're different than what you might expect. We're trying to help people understand when is it a good moment to use an AI tool, and by making them sort of a bit more constrained. You know, you can ask a question across each case in your search results, and then you see that answer per case, and that is a lot, you know, simpler and less vague or ambiguous than just being able to ask a question to case law and then not knowing exactly what these answers are based on, or not knowing what is taking into account for them. And so we're trying to find the right moment to insert these features and making them really easy to use so that you don't necessarily need to train to use this, right? And of course, if you just hover over a citation and you see a quick summary, that, you know, then you can peek into the case that is beneath that. We're pretty sure that, you know, given a few years, that's the way how it should feel like, and how other people will be doing case law research. And AI is just sort of, some of those features would have been able even without generative AI. So I'm wondering, yeah, should we maybe just as a quick teaser share this one thing? The cool thing is we kind of wanted to make this really easy to adopt, and so we actually took some of the best and the simplest things in here and made them available on any case law website. So you can actually use our browser extension on Westlaw, on Lexis, and other places as well to get more familiar with how this would feel like. We even, when I said we're building a word plugin, it's always the same features. We're just sort of putting them into all the different places that you would interact with case law. And so we have these citation pop-ups here, but if I now go to maybe a website like Case Text, where there's also, you know, lots of opinions, and I can still hover over a citation and I get the same kind of pop-up showing me a quick summary. I can see this preview of the case. I can even see to this one, I tagged it in the past so that I remember, oh yeah, this doesn't actually apply to my case. And this idea of just being able to make case law interactive anywhere you go, I think that's going to maybe help make it easier to pick up. And so here's a different case. Maybe here I want to ask a question. And you can get a quick answer before opening the whole case. So it's same idea as before.
That's really great. Yeah, I mean, to Maria's point, I feel like with at least like statutory law and potentially advisory opinions, if they're cited, like this would be a really cool way to like do some quick research, because obviously lawyers aren't familiar with every aspect of every law. But if you're reading an article or reading a case and they reference a law like HIPAA, you could always ask, really quickly, what's the definition of X in HIPAA? And maybe it'll, so you don't have to go dive in and find the definition section and stuff like that. So maybe that's kind of how it could potentially plug in. But this is cool. So like any website you go to, if it sees a citation and can read it, it'll allow you to do the same type of quick research.
And also,
exactly.
Maybe also emerging law. Like, for instance, I've been trying to keep track of the interoperability laws, and they keep coming out with, this is what we're proposing and whatnot. So it's good for me to look back for my research of what the comments were. So I don't know if that's also part of your roadmap, if that's possible.
Good question. So emerging law, I'm not super familiar with that part. That is something that is public law, or is that?
Yeah, that's public. It's kind of like how on the regulatory side, before it becomes law, it asks public, here's what we're thinking about. We're going to impose this baseline, for instance, the CARES Act for under, the COVID times. They put out something that they're going to implement and said it was going to be temporary. And then afterwards they said, okay, we're going to strip out this part, but this part is going to remain in effect. They kind of put out laws that are temporary in place until they get public opinion, and then they do it for like a small period of time, and then they implement the law.
Yeah, that makes sense. That's a good question, because I guess the more of these tools are out there, the more easy that should become, right? And maybe it's not something that Midpage is ideal for. I do think that just uploading a bunch of files and we are going to have all sorts of laws in Midpage very soon. We already have some. But in the future, the ideal process for that would just be, I'm looking at some documents. I want to understand what would change, what would be impacted in those documents by new laws coming out. And then if those laws aren't public yet, then you should be able to sort of point it towards them. Maybe you give it the URL or you download them yourself and put them in there. And I think that would make a lot of sense. It would probably save a lot of time to do it that way. And yes, this sort of interface here would be a cool way to combine both, but maybe sometimes it's already simple enough to just sort of, open a document, chat with it, and ask it to look up the laws in the background. But we don't do that right now.
That's great. Thanks so much for running through this. I love the direction you all are building in. So I think whatever you're doing, just keep going, and I'm excited to see some of the new features they're rolling out soon. So definitely let us know when that's live. And is this free? Can you told, I think you said right now Midpage is open because it sounds like you're really focused on getting user feedback and understanding user behavior and things like that. But maybe you can talk really quickly before we jump on, what the status is of that is.
Yeah, exactly. So we already have several thousand people using Midpage, and still, as you say, we're trying to get more adoption. And so for now, it's free. There's always going to be a free plan that you can use. That's going to be great for reading case law, and only if you want to interact with all those new AI tools. At some point, it will no longer be free, but there's still a bit out. And so if you want to see what legal research can feel like with AI, I think this is probably a good time to try it out.
Great. Cool. Thanks so much, Otto, James. Really appreciate it. And if I get any follow-up questions from the crowd, I'll definitely relay that on. But really appreciate you bringing this to us, and excited to keep watching you all build.
Okay, thanks a lot. Thanks for setting this up.
Thanks so much.
This is so great. Thank you.
See you guys. Thank you.